I never thought $500 could feel like the weight of the entire world, until the day she walked out, leaving me with nothing but a broken heart and overdue bills. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm 27, and until a year ago, I thought I had life figured out. I wasn't rich, but I was happy. I had a small apartment, a steady job at an auto shop, and a girlfriend named Maya, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking in. She made me believe in things like forever. We met at a friend's barbecue 2 summers ago. She was funny, warm, and so confident that I felt invisible next to her. But somehow, she saw something in me. Within months, we were inseparable. We talked about moving in together, building a life, even starting a small business someday. I thought she loved me. I really did. But love, I learned, can be the most expensive lie of all. It started small, little things that didn't make sense. She'd borrow my debit card just for groceries, but the amounts were always more than what she said. She'd get phone calls she'd step outside to take, and sometimes I'd catch her smiling at her phone, the kind of smile that used to be meant for me. But I ignored it. I told myself I was just being insecure. That's what love does. It blinds you until the truth hits like a truck. One Friday evening, I came home early from work. Her side of the closet, empty, the TV, gone. Even the coffee mug I gave her on our first date, missing. On the kitchen counter, there was a note. It said only one thing. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. You'll understand someday." No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. I sat there for hours, staring at that note, not realizing it was only the beginning of the disaster she left behind. Because 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from the landlord. Apparently, Maya hadn't paid her half of the rent for 2 months. Then came the calls. Credit card company, utility bills, even a $500 personal loan under my name that I didn't remember signing for. That's when I realized she hadn't just left me. She'd used me. I tried calling, texting, even reaching out to her friends. No one knew where she was. Or maybe no one wanted to tell me. For weeks, I spiraled. I skipped meals. I couldn't focus at work. Every dollar I earned went to paying off her mess. And every night, I'd replay our memories, wondering which of them were real. Had she ever loved me, or was I just a stepping stone? One night, I sat on my bed surrounded by unpaid bills, and I whispered to myself, "You broke me, Maya, but you won't keep me down." That was the first time I felt anger instead of sadness, and it changed everything. About a month later, I went to help my mom clean out my late grandfather's old shed. He passed away when I was 10, but his things were still stacked in dusty boxes. Tools, photos, newspaper clippings from the 1960s. While sorting through a pile of old envelopes, one caught my eye. It was yellowed with age, marked with bold, faded letters. Safe Deposit Box, EST 1970, branch number 042. Inside was a small brass key taped to a folded piece of paper. My heart skipped. The paper had my grandfather's handwriting. It said, "For my family, should they ever need a fresh start." A safe deposit box. From 1970. And somehow it had never been opened. I felt a strange pull, like fate was giving me a second chance. That night, I couldn't sleep. I searched online for the bank. Turns out it still existed, though under a new name. The branch was only a few towns away. For the first time since Maya left, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Sometimes, life takes everything from you before it gives anything back. Maybe this was my moment to rebuild, not out of revenge against her, but for myself. I looked at that little brass key, turning it over in my hand under the lamplight. It felt heavier than gold. Whatever was in that box, it wasn't just my grandfather's secret anymore. It was my way out, and I was ready to find it. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel the heaviness of loss sitting on my chest. I showered, shaved, and put on a clean shirt. something I hadn't bothered with since Maya left. That little brass key sat in my pocket, warm against my palm, like it was whispering that something was about to change. The bank was in a quiet town about an hour away. The drive felt like stepping into a memory. Old buildings, faded shop signs, and narrow streets lined with oak trees. When I finally pulled into the parking lot, my heart began to race. This was it. The place mentioned in a note written 55 years ago. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and metal. I walked up to the counter and said, "Hi, I found a key and an old record of a safe deposit box from the 1970s. It was my grandfather's." The teller, an older woman with kind eyes, adjusted her glasses. "Do you have the box number?" I handed her the envelope. She looked surprised, then typed something into her computer. After a pause, she said, "Well, you're in luck. The record still exists. Box number 042, opened under a Mr. William Carter." That was my grandfather. She asked for identification and proof of relation. I handed over my ID and my grandfather's death certificate, which I'd brought just in case. After a few minutes, she nodded. "Follow me, please." My legs felt heavy as I followed her down a long hallway. The walls were lined with vault doors, cold and silent. She stopped at a small steel door, inserted a master key, then gestured for me to use mine. The moment the lock clicked open, my breath caught. Inside was a small metal box, untouched by time. The teller gave me privacy and closed the door behind her. I sat down at the table, staring at the box. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were several neatly stacked envelopes, a faded family photograph, and a small leather notebook. The photo was black and white, my grandfather in his army uniform standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. She wasn't my grandmother. Curiosity turned into confusion. I picked up the notebook and opened it. The handwriting matched the note from the shed. The first line read, "If you're reading this, it means life has brought you to a place of need. Everything in this box is yours. But so is the truth I couldn't tell." My pulse quickened as I flipped through the pages. Each one was a journal entry, dated between 1968 and 1972. He wrote about working long hours, saving money, and someone named Margaret. He mentioned her often, how he wanted to help her start a new life, how she was in trouble, how he couldn't let them find her. Then, tucked inside the last page, was a folded envelope with my grandfather's name written in bold ink. I opened it carefully. Inside was a cashier's check, dated 1970, for $25,000. My hands froze. That was a fortune back then. Even now it was life-changing. I checked the corner of the check. It was from a bank that no longer existed. But at the bottom, in neat cursive, my grandfather had written a note. "If the money is gone, the lesson remains. Always protect what you love, but never let love blind you." It hit me like a punch. That line, "Never let love blind you," felt almost like he was speaking directly to me. I sat there, staring at the check, thinking about everything that had happened. Maya, the debt, the lies, and now, this. It wasn't just money, it was a message. I looked through the box again. Beneath the envelopes was another item, a small velvet pouch. Inside was an old pocket watch, gold-plated, still ticking faintly after all those years. Etched inside the lid were 3 words, "For the one who learns." I don't know why, but I smiled. Maybe my grandfather knew one day someone in the family would lose their way just like I had. Maybe this was his way of helping me find it again. As I sat in that cold vault room, I felt something shift inside me. The bitterness I'd been carrying for weeks began to fade. For the first time since Maya left, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt chosen. I didn't know it then, but what I'd just uncovered was only half the story. There was something about that woman in the photograph, something my grandfather never told anyone, and finding out who she was would lead me down a path far darker than I ever expected. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of the woman in the photograph burned in my mind. Her soft smile, the way her hand rested lightly on my grandfather's arm. There was something familiar about her, something I couldn't quite name. I placed the notebook and photo on my desk and stared at them under the dim lamplight. The caption on the back of the photo read only one thing: Margaret, 1969. No last name, no location, just that. My grandfather's journal mentioned her again and again. She wasn't just someone he helped. She was someone he cared about deeply. The entries grew more desperate near the end. They're getting close. I need to keep her safe. If something happens to me, the box will explain everything. The box, after all these years, had reached me, but the answers only led to more questions. The next morning, I visited my mom. She was sitting in the kitchen, sipping her tea, the smell of cinnamon rolls filling the air. I placed the photograph in front of her without saying a word. She looked at it for a few seconds and her face paled. "Where did you get this?" "It was in Grandpa's safe deposit box," I said quietly. "Do you know who she is?" She hesitated, her eyes searching the woman's face like it was a ghost from another life. Then she whispered, "I haven't seen that woman since I was 5. Her name was Margaret Collins. She used to come around a lot." My mom sighed, setting the photo down. "Your grandfather helped her after her husband disappeared. People said he ran away, but Grandpa believed something else happened. Then one day, she vanished too. No note, no trace. He never spoke of her again." A chill ran down my spine. "Do you think they were involved?" "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "But after she disappeared, your grandfather withdrew from everyone. He barely talked to your grandmother. He stopped smiling." I left my mom's house with more confusion than when I arrived. If this woman meant that much to him, why hide her story in a locked box for 50 years? And what did he mean by, "they're getting close"? That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, the notebook open beside me. The smell of old paper filled the room. I traced the final lines with my finger. "If you ever find this, don't look for me. Look for the truth. It's buried where Margaret's story ended." Those words hit like thunder. Where Margaret's story ended. I needed to know where that was. The next day, I drove to the county archive. The building was quiet, filled with the sound of shuffling papers and old air conditioners. I asked the clerk if they had any records of a woman named Margaret Collins who went missing in the late 1960s. After a few minutes of typing, the clerk looked up. "Margaret Collins, yes, reported missing in 1971. Last seen near Willow Creek. No foul play ever confirmed. Case remains unsolved. Willow Creek." That was only 20 miles from my town. I took a drive out there that afternoon. The road curved through pine trees and empty fields, ending near an abandoned farmhouse that looked like it had been untouched for decades. A faded mailbox still read, "Collins." My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car. The air was heavy, the kind that makes you feel like you're walking into a memory. I peeked through the dusty windows. The inside was gutted, just broken furniture and shadows. But near the fireplace, something caught my eye. A half-buried metal box, rusted and dented, sticking out from under the floorboards. I crouched down, pried it loose, and opened it. Inside was a single envelope wrapped in cloth, along with a small locket. The envelope was addressed to William Carter, my grandfather. I opened it slowly, the paper crackling in my hands. The letter inside was short but heartbreaking. "William, they found out. I can't keep running. If you love me, please don't come after me. Take care of your family, I'm sorry." It was signed, Margaret. The locket held 2 tiny photos, one of my grandfather and one of a baby I didn't recognize. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Was this baby hers? His? I sat there in that old, crumbling house, staring at the locket, realizing this wasn't just a love story buried in time. It was a secret that could change everything I thought I knew about my family. When I drove home, the sun was setting, the sky painted with streaks of red and orange. I clutched the locket in my fist and a thought crept into my mind, one I didn't want to believe. What if the truth my grandfather tried to hide was darker than anyone imagined? I couldn't shake the image of that baby in the locket. It haunted me all night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that tiny face, frozen in time, half a century old. By morning, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to know who that child was. I went back to my mom's house, the locket clutched tight in my hand. She was in the garden, trimming the roses when I approached her. I held it out. "Mom, do you recognize this?" She frowned, taking it carefully. When she opened it, her hand trembled. "Where did you find this, Ethan?" "In Margaret's old house. It was buried under the floorboards." She stared at the baby's photo for a long time. I think I've seen this picture before," she whispered. "Your grandfather used to keep something like this in his wallet when I was a little girl. I thought it was me." The words hit me like a jolt. "You thought it was you?" She nodded slowly, confusion clouding her eyes. "But maybe it wasn't. He never said. When I asked him, he just smiled and said, 'Some things aren't meant to be explained yet.' That night, I couldn't stop thinking about what that meant. Could my grandfather have had another child? Someone he never told anyone about? The next day, I took the locket to a local genealogist, a woman named Mrs. Harper who'd helped me before with some family records. She examined the photo under a magnifying lamp. "Given the style of the locket and photo quality," she said, "I'd say this was taken around 1970 or 1971. The baby looks maybe a year old. If you give me both names, William Carter and Margaret Collins, I can try to trace any birth certificates." It took her 2 days. On the evening of the second day, she called me. Her voice was quiet. "Ethan, I found something. There's a birth record from 1970. Mother, Margaret Collins. Father, William Carter." My breath caught. "And the child's name?" "Michael Collins," she said, "born right here in this county." I froze. That name, I knew it. I'd grown up hearing it. A man named Michael Collins had lived in our neighborhood years ago. He owned a small hardware store downtown. I even remembered my mom saying once, "He's such a kind man, always helping others." But could that Michael be him? The child from the locket? My grandfather's secret son? The next morning, I drove to the address listed in the record. The hardware store was still there, old, quiet, tucked between a bakery and a pharmacy. A sign on the door read, "Closed Sundays." But I could see movement inside. I knocked gently. A man in his 50s opened the door. He had gray in his hair and the same piercing blue eyes I'd seen in old pictures of my grandfather. "Can I help you?" he asked. My voice shook. "Are you Michael Collins?" He nodded. "Yeah, that's me. And you are?" I hesitated. "Ethan Carter. William Carter was my grandfather." The moment I said it, his expression changed, like I'd said a name he hadn't heard in years. He looked stunned. Then, after a pause, he whispered, "Come in." Inside, the shop smelled like sawdust and old varnish. He led me to a small office in the back. "It's been a long time since I heard that name," he said softly. "William Carter." I placed the locket on his desk. He stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. His fingers shook. "I haven't seen this since I was a child," he murmured. "My mother, Margaret, used to wear it every day. She told me it belonged to someone who loved us very much but couldn't stay." "So it's true," I said quietly. "He was your father." Michael nodded slowly. "I think so. She never said it directly, but I knew. She'd talk about him sometimes. How he tried to protect us. How he wanted to take us away but couldn't. Then, one night, she disappeared. The police said she ran off, but I never believed that." My chest tightened. "She didn't run," I said. "I found a letter. She said someone was after her. She was scared." He looked up, his eyes glistening. After all these years, I knew something wasn't right. We sat there in silence for a long time, two strangers connected by blood and secrets buried for decades. Then Michael leaned forward. "There's something else you should know. A man used to come by the store when I was a kid. He'd never say his name, but he'd give my mother envelopes of money. My mom would cry after he left. I think that man was your grandfather." My throat went dry. So he'd been there, watching, providing, protecting, from a distance. Michael sighed. "If he's gone, then maybe you were meant to find all this. Maybe he wanted us to know the truth." I left the shop that day with tears in my eyes. I'd walked in seeking closure, but what I found was family I never knew existed. Yet deep down, I could feel there was still one missing piece. Something didn't add up about Margaret's disappearance, and I was determined to find out who they were, the ones my grandfather feared all those years ago. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about what my grandfather wrote. "They re-getting close." Those 3 words felt like a ticking clock, an unfinished warning from a man who had tried to protect the people he loved. Who were they? I started digging deeper. Old newspaper archives, public records, anything that could connect Margaret's disappearance, my grandfather, and whatever danger he'd hinted at. Most of the reports from that time were vague. Local woman vanishes. No evidence of foul play. But one small article from 1971 caught my eye. It was about a land dispute involving several local families. The name William Carter appeared near the bottom, listed as a whistleblower. The article claimed he had accused a group of businessmen of illegally seizing land from war widows and single mothers. One of those women was Margaret Collins. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about love. My grandfather was protecting her, and maybe her child, from powerful people who didn't want their crimes exposed. That night, I called Michael. "I think I know why your mother disappeared," I said quietly. We met the next morning at a small cafe near the river. I showed him the article. His hands trembled as he read it. "She used to talk about men coming around asking questions about the house she inherited," he said. "She was terrified. She said someone wanted to take it from her." I nodded. "I think those men threatened her. And Grandpa. He probably hid the truth to protect both of you." Michael stared out the window for a long moment. "All my life I wondered why she left. I thought maybe she didn't love me. But now," his voice cracked, "now I know she was trying to save me." There was a silence between us, not awkward, just heavy with realization. Then Michael said something I didn't expect. "There's one more place we haven't checked. My mother's old property is still there, the Collins estate. It's been abandoned for years. Maybe we'll find something she left behind." We drove out there together that afternoon. The house stood like a ghost from another era. Tall, gray, wrapped in ivy, the windows cracked and lifeless. The air smelled of rain and dust. We stepped inside, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Every creak of the floor felt like a whisper from the past. The living room was empty except for a few broken chairs and an old cabinet half buried in cobwebs. As Michael tried to open it, something inside clattered onto the floor. A small metal tin, rusted but still sealed. He pried it open with his pocket knife. Inside were several rolls of film, a stack of yellow documents, and a torn letter. The letter was addressed to William Carter. The handwriting was unmistakably Margaret's. It read, "William, they know everything. The land, the papers, your name. I'm leaving tonight with Michael. If we don't make it, keep these safe. They can't be allowed to win." My heart pounded. "The papers," I said. "They must be in here." We unrolled the documents carefully. They were property deeds, proof of land transfers forged in the names of people who never sold their property. And at the bottom of each page were signatures of several powerful businessmen, including one I recognized from another article. Richard Hale. That name still carried weight in our town. His son ran a large construction firm that practically owned half the county. Michael stared at the papers. My mom must have been trying to expose them. That's why she vanished. I nodded. And your mother trusted my grandfather to protect these documents. That's why he hid the safe deposit box. He couldn't go public. They'd have destroyed him. The truth finally started to make sense. Decades of silence, guilt, and secrecy, all born from one act of courage that never saw the light of day. But as I stared at those documents, I knew this story wasn't over. We had evidence, proof of crimes that had been buried for 50 years. The people responsible might be old, but their legacy was still thriving. That night, I sat alone in my car, the box on the seat beside me, and thought about everything my grandfather had done, the lies he told to protect his family, the pain he carried to his grave. I realized something. This wasn't just about uncovering the past anymore. It was about finishing what he started. I pulled out my phone and texted Michael. "We're not hiding this. They got away with it once. Not again." He replied with a single word. "Together." For the first time, I didn't feel broken or betrayed. I felt purpose. All the pain Maya caused, all the anger I'd carried, it suddenly felt small compared to this. My story wasn't about losing money or love anymore. It was about justice. And as I looked out the window at the night sky, I could almost hear my grandfather's voice whisper through the years. "Now, you understand what it means to protect what matters." But I didn't yet realize. Digging up the past was about to put me in danger too. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside my window made me flinch. I kept imagining cars slowing down outside, footsteps in the hallway, shadows moving where they shouldn't. Maybe it was paranoia. Or maybe, like my grandfather, I was finally beginning to understand what it felt like to be hunted by the truth. The next morning, Michael called. His voice was tense. "Ethan, someone broke into my shop last night." My heart dropped. "What?" "They didn't take money or equipment. They took the folder, the one with the original documents we found." My stomach turned cold. Whoever these people were, they were still out there, still watching, still protecting secrets from 50 years ago. "Meet me at my house," I said. Now. When he arrived, we spread everything out on my table. The copies we'd made, the notebook, the locket, and the letter. The weight of it all sat between us like a storm. "What do we do now?" he asked. I thought for a moment, then said, "We do what they never expected us to do. We tell the truth." I spent the next few days contacting journalists. Most didn't believe me at first. An old scandal from the 1970s didn't sound like much. But one reporter, Lena Torres, from a local investigative news site, listened. When I showed her the evidence, she went silent for almost a full minute. Then she said, "Ethan, this could blow open half the county's history. Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked her in the eye and said, "My grandfather died protecting this. My family deserves the truth." She started digging. Within a week, she confirmed everything. The forged land deeds, the shell companies, even old police reports that had been misplaced. The Hale family had been covering it up for decades. Then came the day of the article's release. The headline read, "The Forgotten Fraud: How a 1970s Land Scandal Destroyed Dozens of Families, and One Man's Life." It spread faster than anyone expected. Local TV stations picked it up, online forums buzzed with theories, and old victims' families came forward. Some of the original conspirators were long dead, but their descendants faced public outrage. The Hale Construction Company's reputation crumbled overnight. For the first time, my grandfather's name was spoken not with pity, but with respect. I drove to his grave the next day. The wind was calm, carrying the scent of pine. I knelt down, set the pocket watch beside the headstone, and whispered, "It's over, Grandpa. They can't hide it anymore." For a moment, I swear I felt peace in the air, like the earth itself exhaled. But the story didn't end there. A week later, Michael called again. His voice was softer this time, almost emotional. "Ethan, I had a DNA test done," he said. "I had to know for sure." My pulse quickened. "And?" "It's true. We're family." For a long time, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence said everything. Two strangers connected by betrayal, loss, and one man's unshakable sense of duty, finally brought together after half a century. We decided to restore Margaret's house. Not to live in, but as a memorial. A place to remember those who were silenced by greed and corruption. We called it the Carter Collins Foundation for Truth. It wasn't grand, but it was honest. And maybe that's all my grandfather ever wanted. Weeks passed, and slowly the chaos faded. Life became quiet again. One evening, I sat by my window watching the sun set, the sky painted gold and crimson. I thought about Maya, the woman who left me with nothing but $500 in debt and a bruised heart. It was strange. If she hadn't left, I would have never gone through that old shed, never found the key, never uncovered my family's secret. Her betrayal had been the start of everything. I smiled faintly, not out of bitterness, out of understanding. Sometimes life tears you apart just to rebuild you stronger. I lost someone who lied to me, but in return, I found truth, legacy, and a family I never knew existed. Before going to bed that night, I took the pocket watch from my drawer. It still ticked, steady and strong. Inside, those words gleamed under the light. For the one who learns. And I finally understood. Learning isn't about school, money, or success. It is about learning who you are when the world takes everything from you, and still finding the strength to stand again. I whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, Grandpa." Because in the end, what began with betrayal ended with truth, redemption, and a peace worth more than any fortune.